Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Midday News on 3FM 92.7. My name is Beatrice Adu. The news is also live on Casmi 107.1 FM and across the world at 3news.com. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Cabinet revokes Executive Instrument EI 144 reversing 2022 decision to declassify part of Achimota Forest. Also on the program this afternoon, Dennis Miracles Abuaje aide to NPP flag bearer breaks silence after his release from Iyoko detention as he insists Iyoko never questioned him over alleged 55 million Ghana cedis. Much later on the program, government to begin the final phase of evacuation of Ghanaian nationals from South Africa on July 25 in an exercise that will involve over 900 stranded people who are fleeing xenophobic attacks. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Cabinet has revoked the executive instrument EI 144, paving way for the full restoration of the Achimota Forest to its original legal status as a forest reserve, as captured under the 1927 declaration. Executive Instrument EI 144, which came into effect in 2022, had declared that approximately 361.5 acres, about 146 hectares of the Achimota Forest Reserve would cease to form part of the protected forest. The decision therefore restores the forest to its original classification, bringing an end to the legal changes introduced in 2022 that excised about 361.5 acres from the southern portion of the reserve. The Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Emmanuel Amako Fibua, announced the decision during the government accountability series.
I'm happy to announce a historic cabinet decision taken on the 24th of June 2026 to revoke Executive Instrument EI 144 as amended by EI 234, effectively ensuring that the Achimota Forest retains its original status as a forest reserve and providing ecological safety zone for Accra and its environments. You have to clap for that. If you think about it, this is the only last man standing forest cover in Accra, and President Mahama is determined to protect it at all costs.
Meanwhile, the minister also said that actually 256 suspects have been arrested over the past 6 months over illegal mining-related offences.
Arrested 258 suspects, demobilized 6 excavators, 1,225 pumping machines were seized. We demobilized 765 Shamfan machines. We destroyed 35 tricycles. Motorbikes that were seized were 212. Structures destroyed 430. And gold detectors that we seized was 40. All this in the forest reserve alone. And I'm happy to tell you, today I'm not here to tell you about red zones because we have not had any red zone, which means that government supporting the Forestry Commission is firmly in control of our forests. Wildlife resource management regulations. As part of efforts to strengthen wildlife conservation and management, the ministry, in collaboration with the Forestry Commission, is developing a legislative instrument to give effect to Wildlife Resource Management Act 1115.
And you heard the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Emmanuel Amako Fibua. Let's speak to Awela Sewa. She's co-founder, Eco-Conscious Citizens Ghana. Good afternoon to you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me.
You must be happy with the latest move from the Lands Ministry.
We are pleased. We commend the government, we commend the Lands Ministry for coming up with a revocation of EI 144. Civil society organizations have asking that EI 144 be revoked because, as you know, it affects Achimota Forest, the lungs of Accra, the last remaining forest reserve in Accra. And at a time when all our forests are being decimated, it's very good news to campaigners, very good news.
The minister also announced the arrest of some illegal miners or people related to illegal mining, and also some machines seized as well. How do you react to that?
Well, there have been a number of arrests, but we haven't seen the main people who need to be arrested. The so-called powerful people who are behind this illegal mining. But let me say that in terms of the pump machines, we are pleading that they be sent to Jema. Jema is the only place in the Iowin district where there's no mining. They have rejected all forms of mining, and they are into cooperative farming. So they do need the water pumps, we need them, and they need to be encouraged because we need food to eat. As you know, man cannot live on gold. We need food to eat. And if you want organic, galamsey-free food, it's at Jema that you can get it. And let me also use this opportunity to ask that Atiwa Forest Reserve be turned into a national park, because as we speak, there's illegal mining going on in Atiwa Forest Reserve, and turning it into a national park would afford it greater protection. So we are also pleading for Atiwa Forest Reserve to be made a national park. But we commend the government for revoking EI 144, long overdue, but a step in the right direction.
And you've actually answered a part of the question I'm about to ask you, because I was going to ask, aside from this very step taken by the government concerning Achimota Forest, what else do you expect the state to do in protecting our forest reserves and our environments generally?
Yeah, thank you very much. We would like the Tiwa Forest Reserve to be turned into a national park. There's illegal mining going on. It's 100 years since it became a forest reserve, and unfortunately, we have irresponsible persons destroying the once pristine forest reserve. So we are asking for it to become a national park to afford a greater protection. We are also asking for better equipment for the Forestry Commission. You know, the guards are putting their lives on the line. They are putting their lives on the line to protect our forests. We want them to be given paramilitary status so that the guards can have at least bulletproof vests. You can't go in our forest dealing with illegal miners, many of whom are armed, and you yourself are not well armed, and you don't even have bulletproof vests. So appealing to the government, thank you very much for revoking LI 2462. Thank you very much for revoking EI 144. But please better equip the Forestry Commission so that those putting their lives on the line to protect our forests will be better protected. We are also asking that our forests be protected, and we're asking that the water resource companies, you know, they are mandated to test our waters. We want the test results to be made public so that Ghanaians know what they are actually drinking. Because, you know, Ghana water does not remove the toxins and heavy metals from our water. So we need to know exactly what we are drinking, and that would encourage Ghanaians to get behind the fight against illegal mining. Because as you know, we are facing an existential threat with 60% of our water bodies poisoned and our forest reserves being decimated by the illegal miners.
We'll end it here. Thank you very much, Awula Sewa, for speaking to us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And you had Awula Sewa. She's co-founder Eco-Conscious Citizens Ghana. You're still here on the Midday News on 3FM 92.7, 9 minutes past the hour of 12. Stay with us. We're back with more. So here on the Midday News on 3FM 92.7. Thank you for staying. Now, an aide to the New Patriotic Party's flag bearer, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia Dennis Miracles Abuaje, has denied reports that investigators questioned him over an alleged 55 million Ghana cedi financial irregularity during his detention by the Economic and Organized Crime Office, IOCO. Mr. Abuaje, who was arrested on Saturday, July 11, was released on Tuesday night after meeting his 50 million Ghana cedi bail conditions. In a statement issued today, he insisted that the alleged 55 million Ghana cedi was never discussed during his engagement with investigators. He described his 4-day detention as an attempt to intimidate him, but said that the experience has strengthened his resolve to contest for the position of the National Communications Director of the NPP. He thanked the party's leadership, supporters, and his legal team for their support during his detention. Minority Leader Alexander Penyumaking is demanding the Minister of Justice and Attorney General Dr. Dominic Ayine appears before Parliament to answer questions on what he calls the excesses of the institution in the handling of Dennis Miracle Abuaje.
Can the Minister of Justice and Attorney General be programmed, Mr. Speaker, urgently to come and brief this House on the activities of IOCO? Mr. Speaker, we are a House with oversight responsibility. Mr. Speaker, there are things that are happening. If we don't talk about it today, tomorrow, the other side may be wearing the shoe. Mr. Speaker, the Director of Communications of our party, Miracles Abuaje, was arrested and detained by IOCO at the airport. Mr. Speaker, he has been in custody for over 3 days. We are not against accountability. We are against the Rambo style. Mr. Speaker, our colleagues should not be up in arms. It can be them tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, what is happening to Miracle Abuaje is not good for our democracy. The Attorney General should come to this House and brief us of the situation. IOCO will arrest people if the person was in the country, has traveled, he's coming, then in a Rambo style, he's arrested. Mr. Speaker, at the airport, detained for over 3 days. Mr. Speaker, and now they are demanding properties worth 55 million cedis before he's granted bail. Let's be careful, my dear political colleagues. Let's be careful, Ghanaian political leaders. It can be somebody today. There is an election ahead. You can never tell. Don't let us encourage some of these excesses.
And you heard the Minority Leader Alexander Penyumaking. Well, speaking on the floor of Parliament as well, meanwhile, the Majority Chief Whip Roxanne Nelson Dapiamako has defended IOCO, saying IOCO is acting fairly.
The IOCO proceeded to further say that the arrest follows extensive investigations commenced by IOCO after receiving a petition from the current Executive Secretary of IMC's COD requesting further investigations into a forensic audit conducted into the affairs of the Secretariat covering the period from 1st August 2022 to 2nd February 2025. Mr. Speaker, the charges that Miracles Abuaje and Gerard Appiah faces include conspiracy to steal and stealing, using public office for profit, causing financial loss to the state, dissipation of public funds, defrauding by false pretenses, and money laundering. So, Mr. Speaker, the Minority Leader has no right under the sun to suggest that where an investigative body has conducted a year-long investigation into a matter has invited the suspects and now has made a prima facie determination and is effecting arrest that may possibly lead to prosecution, the minority leader is on this floor saying that we should invite the Attorney General to come and respond to what? That we must not demand accountability from public office holders. Is it not the same man who stands on this floor and cautioning us that we as politicians we should be careful and that it is the public servants who do all the things that we get blamed? And today when the public servant is getting blamed, you are saying that he shouldn't be blamed. So by all means we can do politics.
And you had there Nelson Roxin Dapyamakbo, who is with the majority side of Parliament. Now, the government will begin the final phase of its evacuation of Ghanaian nationals from South Africa on July 25, as about 900 citizens who voluntarily requested to return home are expected to be repatriated. Ghana's High Commissioner to South Africa, Benjamin Kwashi, says the exercise follows earlier evacuation flights that have already brought home 926 Ghanaians in the wake of recent xenophobic attacks. Speaking to members of the Ghanaian community in South Africa, Mr. Kwashi said the repatriation will be carried out in phases with daily flights until all registered persons have returned to Ghana. He said only Ghanaians who completed the registration and screening process will be eligible for the exercise.
Finally, we can bring to note that we are going to do the final repatriation. The modalities will be the same as the modalities of the previous 3 repatriations that we've had. And so we'll be coming to the churches, we'll be speaking to you, we'll be going to the hotels, and we want us all to do this in a very coordinated way. Department of Home Affairs and Border Management Authorities have given us the 25th of this month. Let me repeat. The date is that we'll start the repatriation of the 900 that have been left here on the 25th of this month, 25th of July. We'll come to the various places where you are lodged. We'll transport some of you from all the provinces to come down. I want us to be very clear on the modality so that nobody gets it wrong. 1, we are not doing new registrations yet. We are going according to those who have been registered and screened. If you know that you've not been registered or you've not been screened, we don't want you to make it look as if we are the bad ones. No, we can't be the bad ones. Let's see how we'll be able to help each other. Let's be open and frank. Don't come and say, no, your name is there when you know that you've not gone through the screening process, because it's...
And I heard Ghana's High Commissioner to South Africa, Benjamin Kwashi, is speaking earlier about the next evacuation expected to happen on July 25. Lawyers of former National Food Buffer Stock Company CEO have filed an application seeking to strike out the charges against their client, describing them as fatally defective and in contravention to his right. Earlier, Hanan's lawyers, led by Godfred Yabo Adame, drew the court's attention to the arrest of the former NAFCO CEO at the airport as he sought to travel for medication and his subsequent 4-day detention, seeking orders against the Attorney General for disregarding the court orders. Hanan Abdul Rahab Ludiba and his wife, Faiza Seidu Wini, have been charged with multiple offences, including stealing, causing financial loss to the state, and money laundering. Lord Adosare is our court affairs correspondent. He joins us live on the phone. Lord, what more can you tell us?
Right, Beatrice, and so essentially in court today, the business of the day was for prosecution to provide an update on court orders which directed them to file their disclosures and then call their first witness for the trial to begin. Now, Principal State Attorney leading the prosecution indicated to the court that they had filed their disclosures, was left with a few others, but then their first witness was to testify. At that point, the former Attorney General, Godfred Adame, serving as the lead counsel for Hanan Ludiba, drew the court's attention that there were some developments that he was praying the court to take action on, particularly the fact that the former NAFCO CEO was arrested at the airport on his way to get medication from the United Kingdom following the High Court granting him leave to travel. Now, he indicated that the Attorney General's office, or essentially the prosecution, got Hanan to be arrested and detained for 4 days, for which he was released. Now, he was praying the court for the prosecution to provide explanation as to why they blatantly disregarded the court's orders, which granted Hanan the leave to travel out of the country to seek special medication. Now, in response, A.C. Dentayanka, the Principal Attorney, explained that, yes, they were aware of the developments, they are going to defend it, and they have actually filed an application on notice, which is ripe to be heard tomorrow, and that will put everything in context. And so they actually prayed the court that the proceedings should continue. The High Court judge agreed with the prosecution and indicated that, well, if there's an application on notice which has to do with the prosecution praying the courts to revoke that permission, they'll have to get into the intricacies of that matter, which will be heard tomorrow. Now, he called the first witness to begin testimony, and then Godfrey Dami again ended up objecting it. Now indicates he filed an application for the court to dismiss all the charges against his clients, both Hanan and his wife, citing that they were fatally defective and then they were in contravention to Hanan's rights. Now, the prosecution objected to it, but then the High Court judge indicated that this application filed by Godfrey Dami will be heard on 20th. So on 20th, we'll be back in that application filed by Hanan's lawyers, causing or pleading the courts to dismiss the charges against them. But tomorrow, the courts will hear that application by the Attorney General's office seeking to revoke the permission by the courts granting Hanan. Now, Beatrice, Hanan and his wife were actually in court today, proving that indeed Hanan had been discharged from the premises of the National Investigations Bureau. So this is where we are at as far as this case is concerned, Beatrice.
Thank you very much, Lord Adwasari. He's our court affairs correspondent. We return to Parliament, where the majority in the House has accused the erstwhile NPP government of misappropriating some $600 million approved by Parliament for cocoa farm expansion, tree planting and warehouse construction. The majority caucus says the funds were intended to boost cocoa production, but instead resulted in a decline in cocoa output from about 1 million metric tons to 450,000 metric tons in 2024. Contributing to the debate on the 24-hour economy and accelerated export development program, the majority chief whip Roxy Nelson Dapiamapo criticized the previous NPP administration, accusing it of mismanaging resources meant to revitalize the cocoa sector.
The NPP government, led by the majority leader at the time and leader of government business, they came to this house to secure $600 million from the African Development Bank. The purpose was to, 1, expand cocoa farms, 2, plant new trees, 3, survey the farms, build warehouses, and increase yield. It wasn't done. Mr. Speaker, at the end of 2024 in December, our cocoa yield plummeted from 1 million metric tons a year to 450,000. Jobs were not created. People lost jobs. In the supply chain, a lot of businesses lost out. They chopped the money. Mr. Speaker, you chop the money. You chop the money. Mr. Speaker.
And you heard the Majority Chief Whip Nelson Roxin Dapiamapo. Meanwhile, the ranking member on Parliament Economy and Development Committee, Kojo Ponkoma, also questioned the delay in the implementation of the government's 24-hour economy program, despite the allocation of some 650 million Ghana cedis to the Mahama administration over the past 2 years. Speaking during the parliamentary debate on the 24-hour economy and accelerated export development program, Mr. Ponkoma also argued that the substantial allocation should have resulted in visible progress in the program's implementation.
Mr. Speaker, the promise of the 24-hour economy was clear. 1, 3, 3. 1 job, 3 people, 3 shifts. Mr. Speaker, this government is almost 2 years in office. And in these 2 years, they have appropriated about 650 billion Ghana cedis. That's what this House has appropriated for government to work with. Almost 2 years on, you cannot find one government agency that is applying 133. For all the stories that we were told, for all the analogies that were given, 2 years on, after appropriating about 650 billion Ghana cedis, you cannot find one agency.
And you heard that Kojo Nkrumah, he's a ranking member on the Economy and Development Committee in Parliament. As citizens continue to count their losses after the June 29 flood, questions remain over who is responsible for clearing Ghana's drains. The Ghana Hydrological Agency says dredging major drains and flood control channels falls under its mandate, while metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies are responsible for maintaining smaller roadside drains as part of a coordinated effort to prevent flooding. The clarification comes after the Ministry of Local Government said dredging major drains was not its responsibility, but rather that of the Department of Urban Roads. And I'll bring you more later. And that's it for the midday news here on 3FM and 92.7. My name is Beatrice Adu. Thank you very much for joining us. Bismarck Awusa.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to Business Daily on 3FM 92.7. Coming up, Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry GNCCI urges Bank of Ghana to cut policy rate by 100 basis points to ease business borrowing costs.
At least 100 basis points or something like that, so that it goes down, it's more further. And then also, we also want to see that the currency is also strengthened.
Also ahead, Ghana's Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, urges regulated entities to align with IFRS sustainability disclosure standards ahead of the mandatory 2027 deadline.
So we're sanctioned for not complying with the law. If I'm an investor and you're not reporting, there's a regulatory standard which you must comply with, and you're not complying with that, I'll be mindful in investing my money into that company.
Plus, banking consultant urges Ghana to regulate mobile money as critical infrastructure to prevent a systemic financial crisis. I am Bismarck Awusa. I will bring you details of our headlines and other stories shortly. Please stay. Thanks for your company. Now to the details. The Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, GNCCI, is calling for a 100 basis point cut in the Bank of Ghana's policy rate ahead of next week's Monetary Policy Committee meetings. The chamber argues that lower borrowing costs would provide much needed relief to businesses grappling with high financing costs and help stimulate private sector growth.
The Bank of Ghana has gradually eased monetary policy this year as inflation has slowed and macroeconomic conditions have improved. In March, it cut the policy rate from 15.5% to 14%, before keeping it unchanged at its May meeting, citing uncertainty over global commodity prices and tensions in the Middle East. Speaking at the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industries CEO's Business Forum on the 24-hour economy and accelerated export development, the Chamber's president, Stefan Abbas Miezin, called for a further 100 basis points cut to reduce borrowing costs and support business growth.
Let's talk about at least 100 basis points or something like that, so that it goes down, it's more further. And then also, we also want to see that the currency is also strengthened, it's stabilized, because these things are things that affect the economy. If we see a spike in that, it affects the economy. Inflation comes along with it.
At the same event, the Chief Programs Officer at the 24-hour Economy Secretariat, Abdul Alidu, said the Secretariat is exploring ways to unlock pension funds as a source of long-term financing for businesses.
You know that within the pension industry today, there's a lot of funding. Our pension industry has close to 100 billion cedis under management. Because of the rules that govern the way they invest, they are not able to deploy a lot of that to the private sector. What we are trying to do is to work with the National Pension Regulatory Authority to ensure that we figure out ways to allow them to be able to invest into the private sector.
And that was a report by my colleague Michael Obodu on the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry, urging the Bank of Ghana to cut policy rate by 100 basis points to ease business borrowing costs. Moving on, the Securities and Exchange Commission is calling on entities under its supervision to align with the IFRS Sustainability Disclosure Standards, IFRS S1 and IFRS S2, ahead of their mandatory implementation. The move follows the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana's adoption roadmap, which requires significant public interest entities to apply the standards for reporting periods beginning on or after 1st January 2026. The IFRS Sustainability Disclosure Standards require companies to disclose climate-related risks and broader sustainability information that could affect their financial performance and long-term value. Speaking at a sustainability reporting workshop, Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, James Kluche Aveji, urged regulated entities to use the transition period to strengthen their reporting systems and governance frameworks.
Regulatory-wise, there will be sanctions. There will be sanctions for not complying with the law. But in other way, it also affects them also. If I'm an investor and you're not reporting, there's a regulatory standard which you must comply with, and you're not complying with that, I'll be mindful in investing my money into that company. So indirectly, it will affect your finances if you don't report. So it's in the best interest of the companies to report on this issue so that investors will be prepared and then comfortable to invest there.
You heard Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, James Kluche Aveji. This is still Business Daily on 3FM 92.7 with me, Bismarck. Also, at some other stories, Ghana's mobile money revolution has successfully brought millions of citizens into the financial fold, but its rapid expansion has quietly transformed it into a potential threat to national financial stability. In a landmark analytical paper, banking expert Dr. Richmond Etiahene warns that the digital ecosystem has become too systematically important to be treated as a mere convenience. This 3 Business News report has the details.
With MTN mobile money alone commanding over 19 million active users, the platform now functions as critical national infrastructure. Because these telecom-led networks hold massive cash floats and offer credit-linked services, they essentially operate as a shadow banking system without facing the rigorous capital requirement, deposit insurance, and oversight imposed on traditional banks. This regulatory gap weakens a central bank's monetary policy tools and pulls vital deposits away from commercial banks, which in turn reduces the credit available to local businesses. The vulnerability is further worsened by a steep rise in digital fraud, which threatens the public trust that holds this entire digital network together. To safeguard the economy, the paper advocates for activity-based regulation. Under this module, regulators focus on what an institution actually does rather than its legal identity, ensuring that dominant mobile money operators face proportionate bank-level safeguards to protect public funds before a major systemic shock occurs.
And that was a 3 Business News Desk report. Now, Ghana has established sufficient macroeconomic resilience to withstand temporary inflationary shocks, but the government must urgently accelerate its key development programs to translate this stability into tangible jobs, business growth, and improved living standards. Speaking at a public forum on the country's inflation outlook, development economist and chartered accountant Nicholas Isaka Bana explained that while the ongoing economic recovery remains on track, prolonged inflationary pressures over several months could easily erode the hard-won progress of the past year. There is more in the following 3 Business News Desk report.
This warning comes as domestic inflation begins to rise again, sparking fresh debate on the durability of the economic recovery. Ghana identified food prices, transport fares, energy costs and rent as the critical inflation drivers that policymakers must monitor closely. While favorable weather and strong agriculture yields could help maintain local food costs, the country remains highly vulnerable to imported inflation triggered by geopolitical tensions and volatile global oil prices. To sustain investor confidence and manage national debt, the government has maintained commendable fiscal discipline, yet this spending restraint has led to delayed budget release for various ministries, departments, and agencies. Because the state remains the largest buyer in the economy, sluggish public spending inevitably stifles private sector activity and slows down the real economy. Ghana urged policymakers to strike a careful balance by shifting their focus from simple stabilization to the rigorous execution of a strategic investment in productivity sectors like infrastructure, agriculture, and energy.
And that was a 3 Business News Desk report. Before we go, the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana is calling on the government to establish a clear long-term strategic roadmap backed by a decade of committed, sustainable financing to structurally transform the country's agricultural landscape. Speaking on the urgent need for systemic reform, the Chief Executive of the Chamber, Anthony Morrison, emphasized that a structured 10-year commitment is essential if Ghana is to permanently resolve its food security challenges. According to him, such a framework is vital for ending persistent food shortages and successfully driving down the country's heavy reliance on food imports.
Fundamentally, the sector is having major challenges with purchases of rice. As we speak, we still have more than 500,000 metric tons of paddy rice dotted across the country. And from the north, New Edibiasi, from the Apipe and Adidome enclave, we still have a lot of rice. So we expect that the government to budget enough for us to be able to recoup all these paddies in the system. As you may all be aware, we are also in our major season. In fact, major planting has already taken place. In addition to that, we want a very clear strategic roadmap towards transforming Ghana's agriculture sector. A roadmap that government will be committed towards sustainable financing for the next 10 years. If we are to address our food shortages, reduce imports, whether we're looking at import substitution, then critically integrate in engineering, mechanization, and irrigation.
And that was Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Chamber of Agribusiness, Anthony Morrison, urging government to commit a 10-year sustainable financing roadmap to transform agriculture. And that brings us to the end of Business Daily on 3FM 92.7 with me, Bismarck Ausa. For more business stories, please check out our website, 3news.com. Thanks for your company.